So picture this. You're sitting in your desk, staring at a screen.
Oh yeah, we all know the feeling.
Right. You've got like a dozen tabs open. There's this creeping sense of dread about a task you forgot, maybe 3 articles you promised yourself you'd read. And there's just this overwhelming low-level friction, making it incredibly hard to just get things done.
It's exhausting.
It really is. We have all been there. You feel like you're constantly busy, but somehow you are never really moving forward.
It is an incredibly common feeling, and frankly, a completely understandable one, given the sheer volume of data and, obligations we are constantly bombarded with on a daily basis. I mean, the human brain simply wasn't built to juggle this much unstructured input.
Which is exactly why today we are going on a deep dive into building your ultimate productivity system. We have compiled a massive stack of material for this.
Some really fantastic sources.
Yeah, totally. We've got insights from evidence-based learning masterclasses, deep dives into the psychology of work, and specific frameworks from creators like Ali Abdaal and the Productivity Accelerator. Our mission here is to extract a comprehensive, actionable blueprint that you can apply immediately.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the goal here isn't to turn you into a hyper-optimized machine that just churns out more tasks just for the sake of it.
Because that's the trap, right?
Exactly. That is a very common trap. The true objective of a well-designed productivity system is to entirely offload the cognitive burden of remembering things. You want to free up your brain's processing power so you can actually engage with the work and the people you care about without that constant hum of background anxiety.
Okay, before we get into the apps or the frameworks or the study mechanics, we have to start with the foundation. We have to rewire how you view work itself, because the data on this is brutal. Rough estimate, 85% of people hate their jobs.
85%. That's a staggering reality. It's insane. And since work makes up about 75% of your waking life, if you hate your job, you essentially hate your life.
Right. But when you look at how we are conditioned from childhood, it actually makes perfect sense. A lot of the blame falls squarely on the modern education system.
100%.
From a very young age, true learning and natural curiosity are systematically replaced by rote memorization. I mean, you don't learn the Pythagorean theorem because you are genuinely fascinated by the spatial relationships of geometry.
I definitely wasn't.
Right. You memorize it just long enough to pass a standardized test and avoid negative consequences.
You memorize it, pass the test, and then your brain just immediately dumps the information because it served its short-term purpose.
Furthermore, the system actively disincentivizes the very mechanism of real-world progress, which is experimentation.
In school, you are penalized for raising your hand and giving the wrong answer. But in real science, in business, in life, progress requires guessing and being wrong 1,000 times before you discover what works. We are conditioned to fear friction and failure, which completely distorts our relationship with effort.
Which perfectly explains this hilarious, but honestly kind of depressing cartoon analogy brought up in our material.
The gumball one.
Yes, from the show Gumball. So a character goes to a store clerk and asks about life. And the clerk proudly says, I wake up, I go to work, I come home, and I go to sleep. He repeats this cycle 5 times before suddenly realizing, wait, that's my entire existence.
The realization just hits him.
Exactly. It's the gumball loop, working just for the sake of working with absolutely no destination in mind.
And without a destination, work is simply suffering. There is a deeply personal story shared by one of the productivity creators in our sources that highlights this perfectly. They talk about dropping a full-ride engineering scholarship at Penn State.
Which sounds like absolute madness on paper. I mean, giving up a full ride to a prestigious biomedical engineering program.
It does sound irrational, especially since dropping it meant getting kicked out of the university because they couldn't afford the tuition. They actually ended up working at a Snappy's gas station.
Wow.
Yeah, and they describe living through a long, dark period of struggling, being broke, and feeling completely lost. But the crucial takeaway is that choosing their own path, even a path that led to a gas station, gave them a long-term vision. They chose their own struggle rather than adopting the comfortable, inherited struggle that society or their parents handed to them.
It's about autonomy. I love the comparison they make to video games here.
What's fascinating here is the psychology behind gaming. Why will a teenager sit and grind in a game like Minecraft or World of Warcraft for 8 hours straight?
Because I used to do that.
We all did. But they are executing incredibly repetitive, objectively boring tasks. Mining digital rocks, fighting the exact same low-level monsters repeatedly. but they don't experience burnout. Why? Because the repetitive action is intrinsically tied to a long-term vision. They know that mining those rocks is the necessary stepping stone to building a massive castle.
The context changes the pain into a tangible step toward a goal. It reminds me of the Arnold Schwarzenegger anecdote.
Yes, the gym story.
Right, so in the documentary Pumping Iron, people would constantly ask Arnold why he was smiling in the gym while all the other bodybuilders looked miserable, grimacing in agony. And his answer was that every single painful rep brought him one step closer to becoming Mr. Olympia.
It reframes the effort completely.
Yeah, and there's another famous story from the set of Conan the Barbarian. He had to shoot the same grueling scene over and over. He's bruised, his legs are literally bleeding, and the director asks if he needs to stop. Arnold says no, keep going. He cared more about the finished film than the temporary physical pain.
That is the essence of discipline superseding suffering. However, it is vital to warn against grinding blindly just for the sake of being tough. Burnout doesn't exclusively come from working too many hours.
No.
Burnout primarily comes from working without seeing measurable results. To avoid self-destruction, you have to completely redefine what a win is.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I think a lot of people set massive, intimidating goals and then feel totally paralyzed. So how small should a win be?
So small that it feels almost impossible to fail. If you want to build a sustainable gym habit, your initial win shouldn't be completing a grueling 2-hour weightlifting session. Make the win literally just showing up to the parking lot.
Wait, just the parking lot?
Just the parking lot. If you drive to the gym and sit in your car, you won.
And what does that actually do? Does the brain just accept that as progress?
It absolutely does. It creates a positive feedback loop. You define a micro win, you achieve it, your brain releases dopamine, and suddenly you reduce the cognitive friction required to take the next step.
Which is walking through the front door.
Exactly. Ali Abdaal mentions using this for his own business when he hated sending cold emails. He linked the dreaded work to a guaranteed, measurable reward. If he sent 500 cold emails in a week, he earned the right to play video games for the weekend completely guilt-free.
So we have the mindset. We know we need a vision, we need to choose our struggle, and we need to redefine the win. But how do we actually organize the chaos of our daily lives to get there? Because, neurobiologically speaking, the human brain is a terrible office assistant.
It is a phenomenal processor, but a horrific hard drive. We can lean heavily on a foundational concept from productivity expert David Allen here. He says, your brain is for having ideas, not for storing them.
That is the golden rule right there.
It really is. If we look at the tasks we do daily, we can categorize them into a Venn diagram of 3 types. Type 1 tasks are what your brain is actually built for. Deep creativity, critical thinking, being present in a conversation.
Right.
Type 2 tasks are things your brain can do, but really shouldn't do unassisted, like managing a busy schedule or tracking a multi-step project.
And then there are type 3 tasks, the junk data. Memorizing confirmation numbers, remembering that you need to buy dish soap, or recalling a specific metric for a meeting next month, you should 100% outsource these to a system.
Exactly. And to clear out that mental RAM, you need to build what is referred to in these frameworks as the Ron Weasley layer of productivity.
The Ron layer. I love this. For anyone not fluent in Harry Potter, they call it the Ron Weasley layer because it's the scrappy, bare-bones, everyday survival kit.
It's a great analogy.
It's not flashy, it's not performing advanced magic, but it's deeply reliable and keeps you alive.
That's a perfect summary. There are 4 basic components to this survival layer. First, the calendar. The operating philosophy here is absolute. If an event or a time commitment is not in the calendar, it simply does not exist.
Period.
Period. The calendar forces you to acknowledge the finite reality of time. But it's not just for defensive purposes, like remembering a dentist appointment. You must use it offensively. Block out 2 hours for deep writing. Block out Friday nights for hosting friends.
The second component of the Ron layer is email. And the goal here is 0 cognitive friction. The framework advocates for one touch to inbox 0. When you open an email, you make a decision immediately.
No leaving it to read later.
Right. If it's an event, it goes to the calendar, then you archive it. If it's a task, it goes to your to-do list, then archive.
And you can automate the destruction of junk data entirely. A brilliant tactic from the sources is setting up a smart filter in your email client that searches for the word unsubscribe.
This is such a good hack.
Because your manager or your mother will never email you the word unsubscribe.
Yeah, mom's not sending a newsletter.
Right. So if that word is present, it is marketing spam. You set the filter to make those emails automatically bypass your inbox and go straight to a reading folder or the trash. You never even see them, saving countless micro decisions.
The third component is the to-do list. And the non-negotiable rule here is 100% coverage.
This is where people often push back, arguing that writing down every tiny chore is too tedious.
But you have to.
You do. Because if even 10% of your tasks stay in your head, you will never truly relax. In psychology, this is related to the Zeigarnik effect. Our brains obsess over incomplete tasks, or open loops. If you don't write it down, your brain constantly runs a background process, generating a hum of anxiety, because it knows it's forgetting something, but it can't quite pinpoint what.
Right. You have to capture everything. The framework even recommends a might-do list and a someday maybe list. If you randomly think, someday I'd like to try kite surfing, just write it down. You aren't committing to it, but you are closing the open loop so your brain can let it go.
Exactly.
And the final part of the RON layer is file management. Cloud storage is mandatory.
The philosophy here is frictionless retrieval and total security. Whether you use Google Drive or iCloud, you should never have to feel a cold sweat if you spill coffee on your laptop. Your physical devices should just be temporary portals to your permanent cloud-based system.
So that is the basic everyday survival layer, the Ron Weasley setup. But if you are someone who consumes complex information, like you listen to deep dive discussions, read business books, or are studying for a degree, you need to upgrade to the Hermione layer.
Keeping with the analogy, the Hermione layer represents your advanced magic. It's the high-level system for actively digesting, organizing, and retaining complex information.
It starts with how you capture what you read. Using the Kindle app for highlighting, even on your phone, is huge. And a Read It Later app, like Instapaper or Pocket, is an absolute game changer. Let's be honest, how many times have you clicked an interesting article on Twitter while waiting in line for coffee, and suddenly you've lost 20 minutes?
We have all fallen down that digital rabbit hole. A Read It Later app introduces intentionality. You see the article, you save it to the app, and you close the browser. You process it later when you are actually in the right headspace to consume it.
Okay, so Instapaper captures the articles, but capturing isn't learning. Whether you are prepping for a medical board exam or just trying to internalize a leadership strategy from a newsletter, simply reading the words isn't enough.
This is where we encounter a massive psychological trap. The fluency illusion, also known as the illusion of competence. You read a chapter of a book, you highlight a few poignant sentences with a yellow marker, and your brain tricks you into feeling like you have mastered the subject.
But you haven't. You've just recognized the words.
Exactly. Recognition is not recall. In 2013, Professor John Dunlosky and his colleagues published a massive review analyzing hundreds of studies on learning techniques. They dropped an absolute bombshell on the education community.
This blew my mind.
The most universally popular study techniques, rereading texts, highlighting, and writing passive summaries, are objectively rated as low utility.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If highlighting and rereading are scientifically proven to be practically useless, what actually works?
Active recall. Testing yourself. The neurobiological rule is simple. The harder your brain has to work to retrieve a piece of information, the stronger the neural pathway becomes. Think of it like a muscle.
Right.
Reading a textbook is like lifting a 2-pound dumbbell. It feels productive because your arm is moving, but you aren't building strength. Closing the textbook, staring at a blank piece of paper, and forcing yourself to write down everything you can remember from the last chapter. That is a heavy neural deadlift.
And it feels incredibly frustrating.
It does. It feels hard. But that cognitive friction is the exact mechanism of learning. If it feels easy, you aren't learning.
This is exactly why physicist Richard Feynman developed his famous technique. The Feynman technique is the ultimate test of active recall. Basically, you haven't truly understood a concept until you can explain it to a 5-year-old.
Or to a friend.
Yeah, if it's a complex business strategy, explain it to a friend in plain conversational English. If you have to rely on industry jargon, or you find yourself saying, well, it's hard to explain, it means you don't actually grasp the underlying principles yet.
And once you do finally understand it, you have to battle the next enemy, which is time. Back in the 1800s, psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus discovered the exponential forgetting curve. The moment you learn a new fact, your memory of it immediately begins to decay. By tomorrow, you will have forgotten roughly 50%. In a few days, it's almost entirely gone.
which is terrifying if you are trying to learn a new language or prep for a certification.
It is, unless you systematically interrupt the curve through spaced repetition. If you force yourself to recall the material right at the exact moment you are about to forget it, the forgetting curve flattens out. Over time, the information moves into permanent, long-term memory.
There are two incredible frameworks for building this into your system. First is the retrospective revision timetable. Instead of planning out a rigid study schedule for the whole month, you simply log what you actually worked on today.
Keep it dynamic.
Right. Then you rate your understanding out of 5, or color code it. Red means you bombed it, green means you nailed it. The next time you sit down to work, you look at the tracker and instantly know, okay, I need to focus on the red topics I haven't touched in a week.
The alternative is the perspective diary method. When you learn a new concept today, you immediately open your calendar, your Ron Weasley layer, and schedule a 5-minute review for tomorrow. Then you schedule another review for 1 week from now and a final review for 1 month from now. It automates the spacing so you don't even have to calculate it.
And when you do practice, you have to mix up the subjects. This is called interleaving. There's a great anecdote from the sources about a hockey coach who used this. He would have his players run a specific passing drill, but just as they were getting the hang of it, just as it started to feel easy and fluid, he would blow the whistle and force them to switch to a completely different defensive drill.
The players absolutely hated it. It felt chaotic and incredibly frustrating, but it won them championships.
Because it forced them to adapt.
Exactly. When you only practice one thing over and over, which is called blocked practice, your brain goes on autopilot. It stops actively thinking about how to solve the problem and just executes the physical motion. But by interleaving, by constantly mixing up the drills or the subjects you are studying, your brain has to constantly evaluate, wait, which tool do I need to use right now?
It forces you to diagnose the problem before you solve it. Okay, so we have the vision, we have the Ron layer to hold our tasks, and we have the Hermione layer to master complex information. But let me push back for a second.
Go for it.
None of this works if you just sit on the couch scrolling TikTok. What happens on the days you are running on 4 hours of sleep and you genuinely feel burned out? Does discipline just mean brutally punishing yourself?
That is a critical distinction, and it requires us to shatter a very comfortable illusion, the illusion of motivation. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are fickle. As one of the frameworks bluntly puts it, a 3-year-old bases its decisions on what it feels like. An adult bases its decisions on what it knows it needs to be doing.
That's a great quote.
Discipline is not about self-punishment. It's actually a form of self-compassion. It removes decision fatigue. You don't wake up and debate whether you feel like going to work. You just go. We must replace the fleeting emotion of motivation with the mechanics of discipline.
And you build that discipline by hacking your environment. You have to make the bad habits incredibly difficult and the good habits inevitable. If you were scrolling in bed until 3 a.m., stop trying to rely on willpower.
Willpower is a finite resource.
Just plug your phone charger in on the opposite side of the room. If you are constantly distracted by social media during the workday, bury the apps inside a folder on the 8th page of your home screen so it requires annoying, intentional friction to open them.
You can also artificially manufacture consequences.
Right.
A highly effective tactic is making a financial bet with a friend. Give them $100. If you skip your deep work block, they donate your money to a charity or a political cause you absolutely despise.
That is brutal.
It is, but suddenly the punishment for failing is so visceral that the necessary drive to focus magically appears.
It's extreme, but it absolutely works. And when you actually sit down to focus, you can use the Pomodoro technique. 25 minutes of pure, uninterrupted work, followed by a 5-minute break. A great tool for this is an app called Forest.
I love that app.
It's so good. When you start your timer, the app plants a little digital seed on your screen. As you work, it grows into a tree. But if you exit the app to check Instagram, the tree dies. You literally kill the little digital tree.
It sounds almost childish, but it brilliantly exploits our natural psychological aversion to loss. You don't want to destroy the progress, so you leave your phone alone. And while we are discussing the environment of focus, we must address the concept of study music.
Oh, this is a massive debate. So many people swear they work better while blasting their favorite playlist.
Many people believe that, but the cognitive science says otherwise. Listening to music with lyrics actively interferes with the mechanism in your working memory called the phonological loop.
The phonological loop.
Yes. This is the part of your brain that processes language and internal dialogue. If you're trying to read a complex article or write an email while someone is simultaneously singing words into your ears, Your brain experiences a severe traffic jam. It is trying to process two streams of language at once.
So you are basically self-sabotaging your focus without realizing it. If you want true, deep concentration for that neural deadlift, absolute silence is best. But instrumental music, lo-fi beats, or video game soundtracks are totally acceptable because they don't engage the language centers.
Precisely. You want to completely eliminate any cognitive interference so all of your mental energy is directed entirely into the task at hand.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring it all together and walk through how this actually looks. You wake up, and instead of dreading the gumball loop, you remember your vision, your reason for choosing the struggle.
Right.
You open your calendar and your to-do list, your Ron Weasley layer, which effortlessly dictates your day so you don't have to waste willpower deciding what to do first. When it's time to learn or read, you engage the Hermione layer. You save articles to Instapaper, and when you study, you ditch the highlighters and do the heavy lifting with active recall and spaced repetition.
Yes.
And finally, you don't wait around for motivation to strike. You rely on environmental friction and timers to lock in your focus.
It is a remarkably robust framework. By fully outsourcing your scheduling, your rote memorization, and your daily discipline to perfectly optimized systems, you aren't turning into a robot. You are actually doing the exact opposite. You are freeing up your highly capable human brain to do what it does best: create, synthesize, and be fully present in the moment.
You learn to actually love the grind because you've designed it yourself.
Indeed. However, this raises an important question, one that I think we need to leave you to ponder as you implement these tools.
Let's hear it.
If we successfully outsource all of our memorization, our daily scheduling, and our discipline to perfectly optimized digital systems, do we risk atrophying our internal natural capacity to simply tolerate boredom? If an app is managing our friction, are we losing the ability to navigate the beautiful messiness of unstructured human thought? Are we optimizing away a core part of our raw humanity?
Oh, wow. That is a deeply heavy thought to chew on. You've got your marching orders to build the ultimate system, and you've got a philosophical crisis to figure out while you set up your calendar. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the material. Don't wait for motivation to strike. Start building your system today. We'll catch you next time.